Welcome to another Friday Night Restoration. In honor of the heat wave we've been suffering through all week, I am not going to be restoring anything that runs on vacuum tubes and creates lots of heat tonight. Instead, I'm going to try to get this vintage Arctic fan working. I picked this up, probably close to 10 years ago now, and I poked around with it a little bit when I first got it, but never finished the restoration. I did test out the motor though, and it was running okay, but as we can see, these wires are frayed and disconnected. And as I recall, there's an issue with the switch. I think the wafers are broken down below. Power cord's in great shape though. That's one of my favorite things about this fan. It's got this really nifty cloth covered red and white stripe, not red and black stripe power cord. And it plugs in fine shape. Motor turns freely. Like I said, as I recall, I did have it running at some point. It is reciprocating. I think the mechanism still works. So let's take a look at a couple things. One, I know this bottom plate comes off. I can see what the wiring's like down there. See what's up with the switch. And then I can get this housing off and check out the motor and the reciprocating mechanism. First up, I'm taking the bottom off. Now, as I recall, I did do some mucking around in here, including putting on some new screws. Let's see. I left a note to myself. That's handy. Fan, brown goes to white and green goes to black. Well, I'm not entirely sure what that means, but hopefully be able to sort it out. Okay, I guess these two old wires are brown and green. Not sure what the black and white is. Probably this is white and this is black. And this is the speed control, which is a coil of wire, 3 wires coming out of it, goes up to that switch inside. Let's take a closer look at that. So before I do anything elaborate with fixing this, let's make sure I can actually get it running. Well, it looks like the switch is just fine. I must have been thinking of something else that had a damaged switch in it. So, I think all I need to do is clean up this mess of wiring down here and replace the wires going up to the motor. They seem to go up inside this housing, so I'll need to get this cover off, and hopefully it won't be too hard to get a wire going right up inside. And I will hunt around for some suitable vintage type wiring that's similar to this style. In order to get this cover off, you need to remove the screw for the reciprocating control. The whole thing comes out. And remove the screw from the back here, and if you give it a good tug, it comes right off. Looks like that's an inlet for some oil, so I'll put a few drops down there, and it looks like there's another one up here. I've got a needle oiler for electric clocks. I imagine it'll be okay for this motor too. And here's where that wire is. Ooh, it does go up inside. So instead of mucking around and trying to get all the way down inside there, I guess what I'll do is splice some new wire on up in here somewhere, and it'll be covered up by that cover there. I've temporarily tacked in some new wiring here. and cleaned it up a bit with some WD-40 and some Q-tips. Put a few drops of oil in both those feeders, and I'm ready to try turning it on. So I actually have this set to low, and it's plugged in to my Variac. So let's see, so my Variac, I don't know, 100 volts, and that's a good sign. Sounds like something might be a little out of kilter. Maybe a fan blade is a little bit bent. Nice cool breeze. I actually also have this wired in series with a 150 watt light bulb just in case anything went bad, so I'm sure that's restricting it a bit. So that's low. Let's see what medium's like. Okay, speed select does seem to have an effect. Choose high. Off. I'm not quite sure what's hitting what. So notice that the shaft is pretty loose. I wonder if that's the source of this noise. Let's see if I just spin this manually. Okay, I can definitely hear something hitting somewhere. Well, I'll keep poking around. Should be able to figure it out. But hey, the motor works, and the speed select seems to work, so that's the important thing. I couldn't find any obvious source of ticking as these fan blades are turning. The blades are definitely not hitting the outside cage. So, I got a suggestion online that maybe there's some play in the bearing. It's definitely got play in and out, but he meant up and down, left, right. But doesn't seem to. So my next thought is that perhaps there's something inside this cowling somewhere. So I'm going to take off the cage. There's 4 long screws that run from here to here. Take those off, then this will come off. Also, there's a set screw. Looks like it uses an Allen key to get the fan blade off. Well, I wouldn't have thought it'd be possible if I hadn't done it myself. You can actually get this cage off without removing the fan blades. You just have to carefully find the right angle to kind of bring this around, and you can kind of thread this back through the blades. Well, now that I've got it off, I reattached one of the bolts to hold this front cowl in place. Now I want to try running the fan and see if it still makes a clicking noise with the cage off. Of course, if you're going to do this, you want to stay well clear because there's no protection now. Alright, let's see. Alright, definitely still some ticking. Now I did get another suggestion online that if it's not the shaft, and it doesn't appear to be, that could be an issue with the center hub. And hey, how about that? Oh, there's definitely some plate on it. And it looks like it's held on by some tabs. Oh yeah, I can see the tabs are a little bit loose. So if I can somehow tighten those down, probably easiest done if I remove that, remove the whole blade assembly. I found an Allen key that's the right size. I'm just not sure how to go about getting some good leverage. I can get it on this way, but this little stub, well, maybe I can find an extender, put a tube over that or something to get some leverage. If I go the other way, of course, the motor gets in the way and I can't loosen this up because it just smacks into that. Although I did find an extender for the Allen wrench, I gave up trying to remove the blades. There's just too much stuff in the way. Instead, what it is, I simply pried off the cap. I thought this was plastic with maybe some metal tabs, but no, the whole thing is a dome of metal that's been painted. So with that out of the way, let's see what happens now. Much better. Alright. So I'm going to clean up that hub and reattach it more securely and start putting this thing back together. I've reattached the oscillating control so we can see if that works. According to the top label there, we crank this down and there we go. Yeah, seems to work just fine. And if we loosen it up, it stops oscillating. Alright. I'm glad I don't have to monkey with that, because I'm not quite sure how all that works inside there. I posted some pictures of this fan online, and I got a comment that this power cord very likely came from a 1950s clothes iron. And that makes sense in hindsight, because it seems to be heavier gauge than is necessary. And I was also told that this white fluffy stuff coming out here is very likely asbestos. But it is an attractive cord, so I'm just going to leave it alone. Also got a good tip about repairing this. That I should use some flexible wire, because there's a lot of bending here with the rotating action, the oscillating action. And a nice way to make it look authentic is to take a shoelace, the kind that has an outer coating like this, an outer wrapper, and to take the inner shoelace out and slide the cover over these wires. I don't happen to have one on hand, so I'm just going to leave it as is right now. But I will hunt around in some shoe stores and see if I can find an appropriate looking sleeve to put on there. Which leaves one last thing, the speed control. This coil is supposed to work to drop down the voltage. And I've noticed that when I use my Variac, varying the AC voltage very nicely controls the speed. So I'm not quite sure why this isn't working. It seems to be wired into the switch correctly, and definitely every position the fan works. It just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of variation in the speed. Now it could be it's because I don't have this fan fully assembled. This coil sits on this lump of iron here, and maybe once I screw the base plate on and get this pushed up in there fully, it will have more of an effect. I guess we'll see once I put this back together. Alright, I've reassembled the fan, cleaned it up a bit with a damp rag. Now, let's give it a try. So this will be the highest speed right here. It's really moving a lot of air. It's impressive. It's not done ramping up yet, apparently. Stuff's starting to fly around in my workshop here. Rattling a bit too. I don't think I'd ever use it on this speed though. It's a little too crazy, so. Oh, it's reassembled. Ah, as I hoped. Speed control is definitely having a significant effect now. So that's medium. That's pretty nice. And finally, let's check out low. Alright, put a little oscillation on. Alright, I'm glad I got this working because it is going to be, or is actually over 100 degrees right now. So I really need something to cool off my workshop. Yeah, I've got air conditioning, but when it gets this hot out, it's hard to keep up. And there's no air conditioner directly in my workshop. It's just some indirect cooling from other rooms. So the only thing left is to clean up this wire a little bit when I find an appropriate shoelace. Otherwise, I'm going to call this done. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at a vintage Arctic air fan.